Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about the movie Conan the Barbarian. This is the 1982 film by John Milius, and it happens to be one of my favorite movies ever. This is, of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger's big breakout role. He did a few films before that. He did his first film, Hercules in New York, which was pretty much a train wreck. Like, it's not, not a good film. His performance was terrible. You could see, like, the guy looked great, had the muscles, but he wasn't quite there yet in terms of acting. In fact, he was not there at all. All right. And he did a few kind of bit parts here and there. And then this was his big role. All right. If Arnold Schwarzenegger screwed this movie up, we probably would have never seen him again in movies. I guarantee it, actually. Because from that, he got the sequel, Conan the Destroyer, and he got a whole bunch of other things. So this movie is obviously based on the Conan the Barbarian, like comics, etc. And it has the benefit of being directed by a really, really good director. John Milius, the guy behind like Dirty Harry and stuff like that. So, right away, you're not watching Hercules in New York, all right? You sit down to watch this movie, you're not watching some bullshit, all right? You've got some really interesting shots, even just like the opening title sequence, where it's just like people making swords and stuff. Just beautifully shot. The music in this movie, the score in this movie has to be one of the best movie scores of all time. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. Basil Polduris does the score of this movie, and it is absolutely incredible. Like, it has no right to be as good as it freaking is. From the beginning of the movie, from the first second of the movie to the very end, you are completely blown away by the score. It's big, it's epic, it's intense, it's dark. It's also at times very poetic, very beautiful. Just absolutely gorgeous. So, if you're worried that Arnold Schwarzenegger is just not going to be able to pull off some of the most emotional moments in this movie, don't worry, because the music is going to help a lot. And I think that's the part of the genius of John Milius, is just to be like, all right, we've got a main actor who, let's be real here, looks the part, but he's not quite there yet in terms of acting, right? I'm sure everybody could tell at the time. So we're going to need the audience to really feel what's happening in this movie somehow. So worst comes to worst, we got Basil over here making the music, and it's going to kick the freaking ass, okay? And it did. But I got to say, Arnold Schwarzenegger in this movie, he's not quite there yet. I think by the time you get to Conan the Destroyer, he probably took some acting classes. Unfortunately, the film is much worse than this one. Okay, the Conan the Destroyer, we'll talk about it some other time, is not on the same level as this movie. Ironically, Arnold Schwarzenegger's acting really improved from this movie to the next. This is not to say his acting is terrible here. I think it's very hit and miss, where like there's some scenes where he doesn't have it. Definitely. But there's some scenes where he really nails it, and you're like, okay, there's something there. You can tell why people started casting Arnold Schwarzenegger like soon after that, because it's like, you can tell this guy, there is some kind of spark there. This guy is at the very least, he's a bodybuilder. Okay, he's at the very least willing to go all out and do the work. The scene where Conan is all bloodied and he's being caught by Thulsa Doom, right? He got the shit kicked out of him, and he's just like screaming like, "You took my father's sword!" Like, this is a really good performance he's giving in that sequence. There's other scenes, near the beginning. It's a little rough near the beginning where he doesn't quite have it. But by the end, when he's making the speech to Crom and everything, yeah, he nails it. And honestly, like, he doesn't even really look the part. I mean, if you look at the old illustrations of Conan the Barbarian, Conan the Cimmerian, Conan the whatever, all the different Conan graphic novels and whatever. He's got pitch black hair, okay, and the face shape is not really Arnold Schwarzenegger's shape. It's got kind of his jawline is very different. He's got kind of a more Native American kind of look. But Arnold Schwarzenegger in the beginning doesn't really sell it, especially because he's got a string of bad haircuts. At the beginning of the movie, he's got a string of bad haircuts. Okay, if you don't know the story, and we'll get to it, these bad guys show up, who are basically part of a cult, some kind of heavy metal cannibal snake cult. All right, run by this dude who is the most evil person ever, Tulsa Doom, played by James Earl Jones, who is fucking incredible. And if there was any justice in the world, okay, the Oscars or whatever, oh my God, James Earl Jones would have earned himself a Best Supporting Actor Oscar like that. I mean, he is so freaking good. Like, this movie deserved a lot more praise than it got. But I think it's one of those movies that was kind of like, it did well, but it was like a cult classic as well, right? But anyway, so these bad guys show up to Conan's village. He's a little boy at the time. He's got his parents, etc. The village is completely destroyed. Tulsa Doom annihilates everybody in the village and leaves Conan alive with the other kids to take them into slavery, basically. Kills both of his parents, chops the mother's head off. The father is eaten by dogs, I think. It's horrible. So Conan is left just kind of like pushing this big wheel in the desert. All right. And then he becomes kind of like, a part of the gang. He starts doing these fights, these underground fights and stuff. But eventually he breaks out of it. He's just like, you know what, fuck this. And then goes off on his own into his own adventures. He meets some weird characters, there's like this witch that like invites him over. Like ladies just like invite you over from like their freaking cave. Like, why is she in a cave? So he shows up and she turns out to be a witch. He's like, fuck this. Very funny scene. He also meets like a king, played by Max von Sydow, who is in this movie. I always forget he's in this movie. And when he shows up, he's got one scene. My God. He's got Max von Sydow. Okay. I always say Sydow, but I think it's Sydow. Max von Sydow. He's got one scene, freaking destroys it. He is so intense. He is so freaking good. My God. You realize right away, like, oh, Max von Sydow knows what he's doing. Okay. But the main story is, obviously, Conan is a little salty about what happened to him. So he wants revenge. He kind of becomes a thief at one point. He meets this girl. They fall in love. He has a friend as well, who Subatai, I think his name is, who's like an archer. And they start, they're having fun. They're having a good time. They're thieves, so it's not like the most glorious existence, but they're making money. They're getting through the day. They're having little adventures. They're having a good time. Until Conan realizes there's this tower here, and this cult of Tulsa Doom is growing in this world. And he wants to go into that tower and steal something. And there he meets one of Tulsa Doom's henchmen, and that kind of starts his whole journey to get revenge. But it's not going to be as easy as he thinks, and there's going to be some major sacrifices along the way. Arnold Schwarzenegger, by the second half of the movie, you're basically sold on his performance. You're basically like, okay, you know what? This guy is Conan. All right? If you're not with him in the first half, you're at least with the movie. You know what I mean? You're at least with the stunning score and direction by John Milius. Those beautiful shots. There's one shot at the beginning that I always used to take for granted, and it's the shot of Conan's father talking to him when he was a boy. and it's just this long kind of conversation, and they're in front of these mountains, and it's probably, it's probably like a backdrop, like a fake background. But even though it looks kind of like they're on a stage or something, it's so beautiful. You know what? It somehow works. It gives the scene like an otherworldly quality. And there's a few of those scenes in this movie. Lots of really creative ways of creating depth and creating kind of just making it as epic as possible. This movie, but this is actually an epic movie. You've got a good amount of there's a whole sequence where all these followers of this cult are lining up to go up to this temple, right? So many freaking extras, dude. Like crazy. Like it feels like this movie kind of takes you back to the time of like not just sword and old, like sword and sorcery movies, like the Sinbad movies or something, with like Ray Harryhausen, doing the effects and stuff. It takes you even further back to stuff like Spartacus. You know what I mean? Like those kinds of like movies, like Ben-Hur. It's got that feel as well, that classic feel, and I wish we saw more movies like this these days because it's so rare. I remember they tried to do Troy at one point. Oh, yeah, okay. You had Gladiator, of course, huge hit, but that was a while ago. They're working on a second one, but I want to see more stuff like that. And I think that's the one thing that the Conan the Barbarian really missed. The remake, where it was just like, it just felt like any other movie. You know what I mean? Like it felt like just a generic action movie, and it's like, no, it's Conan. It should be something else entirely. It should feel grand. It should feel brutal. It should feel, it should be gory. It should be cruel. It should be this movie. Basically, this movie really captures the spirit of what Conan is all about. You care about these characters, you care about Conan. Those characters are not too deep in terms of what they talk about to each other, or they've got their kind of morals, right? And they've got their emotions, but they're very simple people, okay? They just want to make money, they just want to fuck, they just want to get revenge, and that's pretty much it. Run around, eat some raw bison or punch a camel in the face. Very, very simple people with very clear goals, okay? Even the bad guys. I mean, the bad guys are pretty... I think those are the bad... As soon as you see one of them, you're like, I think those are the bad guys. Those are definitely the bad guys. Tulsa Doom shows up, you're like, that guy is not good. That is not a good guy. So, they're one-dimensional in their own way, but at the same time, they do have some depth to them. It's just kind of, it is like comic book characters kind of thing, where it's like, it's not too deep, but you relate to these characters anyway, because you understand them. Like, they're very easy to understand. You get what they want. You get that they're good people at heart, obviously not the villains. So you want them to succeed in what they're trying to do. And the first scene is so traumatic. Not just for the character of Conan, but for the audience as well. The audience sees this massacre and the way they killed Conan's parents. And they're like, you know what? This is fucked up. This is not okay. They did not need to go this hard on this village. You know what I mean? Like, this village is just like some fucking little village in the middle. Those people were happy. They were having a good time. They didn't deserve this. Conan's revenge mission is you're actually kind of down for that. So it carries you through the whole movie. Mako is in this movie, who was in a lot of movies in the 80s, and rightly so. He's great. He's really good. He plays this old dude who's kind of like, he's like a wizard, right? At the beginning, you kind of like, Conan meets him, and he's like, this guy's not a wizard. This guy's a freaking joke. But I like him. He seems like a good guy. So then they become friends. But then he turns out to actually be a freaking wizard. This guy was not fucking around. This guy actually does some crazy shit with Conan later on, in terms of like summoning like ghosts and stuff. There is a supernatural element to this movie. This movie is very gory. It's not over the top. When there's a fight, it gets gory. But obviously, they all have big ass swords. I couldn't watch the the soup with the freaking hands in it. Because the snake people, it's a long, don't ask. It's a long story, but they eat human flesh. All right, so there's this big green disgusting soup at the end of the movie, and it's got like heads in it and eyeballs, and it's gross. So I couldn't watch that as a kid. I couldn't watch the scene where I think Conan, like the scene where like he bites a vulture's head off or something when he's like all crucified. Anyway, I could go on. I could talk about this movie all day long. Okay, suffice it to say that this movie is awesome. Let's not mince words here. All right, this movie's awesome. You have to watch it. That's the law. You have to watch it. Okay, you have to watch one badass movie at least in your life. Might as well make it this one. Okay, Arnold Schwarzenegger proved himself to be a star by the end of the movie. We're definitely going to see this guy again. Just a great movie, not just visually, but in terms of just kind of like the performances, the whole mood of it. This movie has a very unique mood to it, bringing back this kind of swords and sorcery thing, which is done so well in this movie. Unfortunately, there's a slight dip in the second movie. There's some good stuff in Destroyer, but it just couldn't live up to the greatness of this movie. And it's not perfect. This movie, especially in the first half, you might have some criticisms, some doubts. You're kind of like, I'm not sold on that, I'm not sure about this. But like I said, by the second half, you will be on this roller coaster ride with Conan and his friends, and you won't look back. This is an excellent film. I can watch it anytime. I've watched this movie many times, and it's always a pleasure. So definitely check it out. I can't, in good conscience, give this movie any less than 5 stars. It's very much a must-see. And a must-hear. Definitely check out the score on its own and tell me it's not one of the best scores you've ever heard in your life. Okay, so thank you for watching. I will see you guys in the next review. Take care, everyone.